No one expected the storm to come so silently. One morning, James woke up to the sound of police sirens echoing outside his apartment window. Papers were scattered across the floor, documents he had never seen before, forged contracts under his name, accusations he had never even imagined. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone, but the moment he called for help, a cold realization struck him. Someone had set him up perfectly, too perfectly. And the only person capable of such a cruel move was his own father. Father James had always been strict, always pushing James to fit into the mold of the successor he envisioned. But this was different. This was not parental pressure. This was destruction. This was exile. As footsteps rushed up the stairs, James bolted through the back door, heart pounding in his ears. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have time. All he had was fear, shock, and the image of one woman burning in his mind. Diep. The woman who loved him with her whole heart. The woman he had promised to marry. The woman he could no longer protect. Running through narrow alleys and disappearing into the early morning fog, James felt a sharp ache in his chest. He wanted to call her. He wanted to hear her voice. But if the police traced the call, they would drag Diep into the chaos he had fallen into, and he refused to ruin the life of the woman who had given him warmth when the world turned cold. Still, his heart wouldn't let him leave without one last message. Inside a deserted bus station, James typed with trembling fingers. Diep, something happened. Don't believe anything you hear. I will come back for you. Please, wait for me. He hit send just moments before boarding a bus headed nowhere, just far enough to vanish. As the vehicle rumbled forward, he pressed his forehead against the cold window. The city lights blurred behind him, fading like the life he once had. Every bump on the road felt like a reminder of everything crashing down. Betrayal, lies, fear. But the greatest weight was the memory of Diep's smile, soft and trusting, and the fear that she might never see him the same way again. James was now a fugitive in his own country, framed by the man who brought him into the world. But even as darkness swallowed the horizon, one promise kept him breathing. He would return to Diep. He had to, because love, real love, was the only thing he had left.
When Diep received James's message, her hands froze around her phone. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. At first, she didn't understand the meaning behind those desperate words. But when the news broke, accusations, forged evidence, claims that James had run away after committing corporate fraud, her heart shattered in an instant. People whispered, reporters appeared, neighbors stared. Yet Diep stood calmly at the small kitchen table, the phone still in her hand, reading James's message again and again. Please, wait for me. The ellipsis felt like a knife, full of fear, full of apology. But the storm she had to face was only beginning. That afternoon, Father James arrived unannounced. His presence filled the tiny house like a shadow swallowing the light. Diep hadn't even finished wiping her tears when he stepped inside, shoes still dusty from the road, expression carved from stone. So, he said coldly, "You've seen the news?" Diep swallowed hard. James didn't do those things. Someone framed him. The older man's lips curved into something between a smirk and a warning. Someone. You think this happened by accident? My son is foolish, but not enough to orchestrate this mess. And you,
His eyes narrowed, sharp as blades. You are a distraction he shouldn't have had. Diep clenched her fists. I love him. That's not a crime. To me, it is, because it weakens him, because it makes him disobedient. She felt her throat tightening as anger mixed with fear. Where is he? What have you done to him? Father James stepped closer, lowering his voice as if speaking to a child. James is gone, and if he has any sense left, he will stay gone. A man with charges like his has no future, and neither do the foolish girls who cling to him. Diep's breath trembled. He didn't run. He escaped. And that, he said softly, dangerously, is exactly why I came here, to make sure you don't become another liability. Diep felt the air thicken. For the first time since meeting him, she understood the true depth of his power. Cold, merciless, calculating. But she refused to break. With or without your approval, she said firmly, despite her shaking hands, I will wait for him. I will believe him, and I will not fear you. Father James stared at her for a long, chilling moment. Then he smiled, slow, cruel. We will see, he murmured. We will see how long your faith survives. And with that, he left her standing in the quiet room, her heart pounding, tears burning behind her eyes, alone against a world determined to tear her apart.
While Diep was being cornered by Father James's cold warnings, James himself was miles away, hiding behind layers of uncertainty and danger. The small motel room he was staying in smelled of damp wood and old cigarette smoke. But he didn't care. Safety was a luxury he no longer had. He sat on the edge of the narrow bed, staring at the burner phone in his hand. No contacts, no saved numbers, not even Diep's. His father had ensured he couldn't be traced, not by the police, and certainly not by his own family. His father. James closed his eyes, fighting the wave of betrayal that nearly crushed him. He had always believed the man's strictness came from love, from the pressure of legacy, from wanting his son to be strong. He had never imagined that the same man would engineer his downfall, fabricate evidence, bribe witnesses, and destroy his reputation overnight, all to force him into obedience. But the moment he overheard the conversation between his father and a high-ranking official, everything became crystal clear. He's too soft. That girl will ruin him. If he doesn't step away willingly, we force him to. That was the moment James realized he was nothing but a pawn. His career, his company, his freedom, they were tools his father used to control him. And Diep, she was simply a target to be erased. James's jaw tightened. No, he refused to let them hurt her. On the dusty table in front of him, he spread out all the documents he had collected, hidden bank transfers, audio recordings, contracts manipulated at the last second. Alone, each piece meant nothing, but together, they were enough to expose every crime his father had committed. He just needed time. And time was the one thing his father would never allow. A quiet knock startled him. He grabbed the lamp instinctively as a weapon, but when the door opened slightly, a familiar whisper slipped through the crack. James, it's me, too.
James froze. His heartbeat stopped. His mind raced. It couldn't be. Diep wouldn't risk something this dangerous.
Unless... He moved toward the door in disbelief, but before he could touch the handle, the whisper came again. "James, please, open the door." His breath trembled. Had she found him? Or was this another trap? His father's trick? A cruel imitation meant to flush him out? James pressed his head against the wooden door, torn between fear and longing. If it truly was Diep, she was in danger. If it wasn't, he was in even more danger than he thought. "Diep," he whispered back. Silence. Then, "James, I need you." His heart cracked open. No matter the risk, no matter the fear, his hand moved toward the door. Diep awoke before sunrise, the air still cool and trembling with the hush of the countryside. For a moment she lay still, listening to the faint rustle of banana leaves brushing against the window. Every morning for the past month, she had opened her eyes, hoping that by some miracle James would be there, leaning at the door frame with a tired smile, arms ready to pull her close. But reality greeted her with silence, and the growing ache of longing pressed deeper into her chest. Yet today felt different. She rose, washed her face, tied her hair, and stepped outside to feed the chickens. The world was soft blue, the kind of fragile morning that seemed to whisper secrets. As she scattered the feed, a sudden breeze brushed past her, lifting her dress lightly. Gentle, but unmistakably familiar. She froze. That breeze had always carried his scent in her memory. Her heart raced. Could it be? But before hope could fully bloom, the sound of hurried footsteps approached from the gate. Tuan, James's most loyal employee, arrived breathless, dust clinging to his clothes as though he had traveled all night. "Tuan," he panted, "I have news." Her hands trembled. "Is he alive?" Tuan nodded, and she nearly collapsed with relief. "He's alive, and he's coming." The investigation turned in his favor. The police found the hidden accounts, the forged signatures, and the land documents showing his father's involvement. Everything is unraveling. They're clearing James's name. Diep covered her mouth to muffle her sob. Joy and fear pooled together until she could barely stand. Where is he now? He's on his way. It felt unreal, too precious to trust, but Tuan's gaze was steady, warm. He insisted the first place he returned to would be you. As the sun lifted above the mountains, painting gold across the fields, Diep found herself walking towards the old dirt road that led into the village. Her steps quickened, her heart thumped so loudly she thought the whole world might hear. Then she saw him. James stood at the far end of the road. Thin, bruised, his shirt stained with the wear of running and hiding. But his eyes, those deep, gentle eyes, were fixed on her with the same certainty he held the night he first confessed he loved her. "Diep," he whispered, voice breaking. She ran. He caught her mid-stride, arms wrapping around her tightly, as though afraid she might disappear. She felt his breath against her hair, the trembling in his shoulders, the way his heart hammered wildly against hers. "I'm here," he murmured, "and I'm not leaving again." Tears streamed down her face as she pressed her forehead to his chest. "I waited," she whispered. "No matter how far you went, I waited." James cupped her face. "And I spent every second fighting to come back to you." The morning light warmed them, as if blessing their reunion. For the first time in months, Diep felt something stronger than fear, hope, fierce and bright. James was home.
In life, we often believe that strength is measured by how much we can endure alone. We try to hold our fears inside, pretend that every hardship can be carried on our shoulders, and convince ourselves that vulnerability is a weakness. But the truth, as Diep and James learned through their long journey, is that real strength comes from the courage to love, to trust, and to hope, even when the world pulls us apart. One of the greatest lessons from their story is that love does not exist only in moments of happiness. Love must also survive storms, distance, misunderstandings, and the shadows of the past. When James was forced to run because of the crimes his father committed, Diep could have chosen the simpler path, to forget him, to protect herself from pain, to walk away from a future threatened by uncertainty. Yet she stayed loyal to her feelings, even when she had no promises, no explanations, and no certainty that he would return. Through her patience and quiet bravery, we learn that love is not measured by convenience, but by persistence. When we stand beside someone in their darkest moment, we show what it truly means to care. Another lesson shines through James's journey. He spent months on the run, carrying guilt he never deserved, fighting against the consequences of another man's mistakes. It would have been easy for him to give up. It would have been natural for him to hide forever, believing himself unworthy of Diep's devotion. But the moment he chose to fight, to clear his name, to face his father's sins, and to come home, he proved that redemption is always possible for those who refuse to surrender. His courage teaches us that we cannot let the past define who we become. We must take responsibility for our own story, and we must keep moving forward even when we feel unprepared or afraid. Perhaps the most powerful lesson lies in the moment they finally reunited. Months of silence, fear, and longing could have built resentment or doubt, but instead, their reunion was filled with forgiveness. Life will not always go as we plan. People will hurt us, circumstances will separate us, and sometimes we will lose ourselves in the chaos. But if we are willing to forgive, not only others but also ourselves, we can return to the people and dreams that matter most. Finally, their story reminds us that hope is not naive. Hope is an act of strength. Diep woke up every morning believing James would return, and James risked everything, believing he could reclaim the life and love stolen from him. Hope is the thread that pulled them through the darkness, and it is the same thread that can guide any of us through our own struggles. In the end, life is not defined by the storms we face, but by the heart we bring into those storms. Love that endures hardship becomes unbreakable. Trust that survives fear becomes unshakable. And hope that refuses to die becomes the foundation for every new beginning. This is the lesson their story leaves us. No matter how heavy the journey becomes, we are never truly lost as long as we have someone to return to, something to fight for, and the courage to believe that light will come after the darkness.